The halo of an angel does not break like glass. When it shatters, it sounds like a bell tolling for the end of a universe, a deep, resonant hum that vibrates in the teeth of every living god. On this battlefield, the sound had become a rhythm. The sky above was not the familiar void of space, nor the kaleidoscope of the Tournament of Power. It was a suffocating, bruised purple, hanging low and heavy like a shroud. The ground was not dirt, but a cracked obsidian mosaic, slick with a glowing, pale blue fluid that hissed against the stone. It was the ichor of the divine. Vegeta walked slowly. His boots crunched not on gravel, but on the pristine, white remnants of divine rings. He wore no armor. His chest was bare, scarred not by battle, but by a sprawling, blackened sigil that pulsed over his heart, a mark that seemed to eat the light around it. His hair was not the gold of a Super Saiyan, nor the royal blue of evolution, nor even the violent violet of ego. It was a void black that seemed to lack dimension, a hole in the reality of the scene. He stopped before a fallen figure. Vados. Her staff lay splintered. Her breathing was a ragged gasp that leaked silver light. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling with a fear that her species had never been programmed to feel. "You have traded everything." Vegeta looked down. His eyes were entirely white, devoid of pupils, burning with the cold indifference of a dead star. "I traded nothing," Vegeta said, his voice overlapping with a deeper, ancient, distorting echo. "I merely found a master who did not ask me to forgive." He raised a hand, and the purple gloom descended. "Before the Grand Priest descends to answer this heresy, and before the final laws of the cosmos are rewritten by a Saiyan's rage, anchor your presence here! Mark this timeline, lest it be erased from memory forever. Power is not a ladder. It is a cage." For decades, Vegeta, prince of the fallen Saiyan race, had believed that strength was merely a matter of climbing, of ascending from the dirt of a low-class warrior to the gold of a Super Saiyan, and finally into the violet aura of a god. He had chased Son Goku's shadow until his lungs burned, believing that if he simply ran faster, he would eventually reach the sun. But as he sat on the jagged stump of a withered tree on Beerus planet, the truth settled upon him like a shroud of lead. The hierarchy of this cosmos was not designed to be climbed. It was designed to be obeyed. The wind on the destroyer's planet was always warm, carrying the scent of alien pollen and the terrifying, sleepy hum of Beerus snoring. Nearby, the oracle fish floated in its bowl, muttering prophecies that tasted like riddles. But Vegeta was not listening. He stared at his own hands, calloused and scarred, trembling slightly not from exhaustion, but from a profound, vibrating fury. He had achieved Ultra Ego. He had learned to turn his battle lust into fuel, to burn his own soul to mimic the destructive capacity of a god. But even that was a lie. To use Ultra Ego, he had to accept damage. He had to let the enemy strike him, to let pain be the catalyst for his power. It was a slave's philosophy, the idea that one must bleed to be strong, that one must endure the whip to learn how to hold it. And at the end of that path, what waited for him? The title of Destroyer? A collar made of purple energy, worn at the pleasure of the Omni King? Kakarot seeks the quiet. Vegeta whispered to the empty air. He seeks to polish his soul until he is nothing but instinct, a puppet of the angels. And I am teaching myself to be a bomb. He stood up, and the ground beneath him fractured, a spiderweb of cracks spreading instantly across the stone. He looked up at the sky, where the nebulae swirled in mockery. He was tired of the colors. The silver of the angels, the purple of the destroyers. They were uniforms, and Vegeta was done wearing uniforms. He did not say goodbye. To offer a farewell was to acknowledge that he cared about the opinion of the one he was leaving. He simply flared his ki, not in the explosive roar of a transformation, but in a tight, pressurized scream of propulsion. He launched himself off the surface of the planet, shattering the atmosphere in a single sonic boom that woke the oracle fish from its slumber. By the time Beerus opened one lazy eye, sensing the disturbance, the prince was already gone, a streak of light bending away from the warmth of the living universe. Vegeta did not head for Earth. He did not head for the Galactic Patrol, or the Yardrat homeworld. He flew toward the scar on the map of existence where the Tournament of Power had once taken place. He flew toward the Null Realm. The journey required him to bypass the dimensional boundaries of Universe 7, a feat that would have killed a lesser god. But Vegeta pushed his body beyond the limits of physical sustainability, tearing through the hyperlanes of the Kaioshin. He sought the silence. He sought the place where Zeno's childish laughter did not echo, where the Grand Priest's laws held no sway. He sought the absolute zero of existence. As he breached the final membrane of reality, the stars blinked out. The swirling galaxies, the hum of life, the pressure of gravity, it all vanished instantly. He drifted into the null realm. It was a vastness without horizon, an infinite canvas of nothing. Here, there was no up or down, no light or dark, only the terrifying clarity of one's own heartbeat. It was the graveyard of timelines that never were. Vegeta floated in the blackness, his arms crossed, his eyes scanning the emptiness. He expected solitude. He expected to scream his frustrations into a void that would not answer, to train until his mind shattered or hardened. But as he drifted deeper into the abyss, the silence changed. It was not empty. The darkness felt heavy. It possessed a texture, a viscosity that pressed against his skin like oil. The hair on the back of his neck stood up, a primal instinct screaming that he was not the apex predator here. In the distance, if distance even existed in a place without space, two pinpricks of light ignited. They were not stars. They were too still, too cold. They were eyes. A voice did not speak, but a thought slammed into Vegeta's mind with the force of a planetary collision. It was a sound deeply ancient, tasting of rust and forgotten iron. The toy of the destroyer comes to the place of the discarded, the voice echoed, vibrating in Vegeta's marrow. Do you seek to be broken, little prince? Or do you seek to be unmade? Vegeta uncrossed his arms. His heart hammered against his ribs, but he forced his face into a mask of arrogant disdain. He had stared down Majin Buu. He had stood before Jiren. He would not tremble before a shadow. I seek nothing from you, Vegeta shouted, his voice sounding thin in the vacuum. I am here to find the end of my own power. If you are a demon of this void, stay out of my way, or I will destroy you too. A low, rumbling sound filled the void laughter. It was a sound devoid of joy, dry as bone. Destroy? The entity mocked. You use the word like a child wielding a stick. You mimic the purple cat, thinking destruction is a color of ki. You know nothing of the end. The darkness shifted. The two eyes rose, higher and higher, until Vegeta realized the scale of the entity before him. It was colossal, a mountainous silhouette that blotted out the nothingness itself. It sat cross-legged in the void, draped in robes that seemed woven from event horizons. It was a being that should not exist, a memory the cosmos had tried to repress. Vegeta flared his aura, the purple flame of Ultra Ego igniting around him, casting a desperate light against the Titan. Show yourself! Who are you to speak to the Prince of all Saiyans? The giant leaned forward, and the purple light of Vegeta's aura was swallowed, eaten alive by the mere proximity of the being. I am the draft that was rejected, the voice thrummed. Before the child Zeno was given the throne, there was the Father. I am the silence that was exiled, so that the noise of creation could begin. The figure's hand, vast and pale, emerged from the gloom. It did not strike. It simply opened, palm up, an invitation that promised death. Your soul reeks of a sealing Saiyan. You have hit the glass roof of your angel masters. You want to break it, but to break the roof, you must first burn the house down. Vegeta stared at the hand. The power radiating from this being was not divine. It was not malicious. It was simply absolute. It felt like the cold logic of a math equation that equals zero. Can you? Vegeta's voice wavered, then hardened into steel. Can you show me how to kill a concept? The banished father did not answer immediately. Instead, the colossal shadow shifted, causing the non-existent ground beneath Vegeta's boots to ripple like water disturbed by a falling stone. The eyes, twin voids of absolute apathy, narrowed, focusing on the speck of Saiyan flesh floating before them. You ask for the impossible, the voice rumbled, the sound vibrating in Vegeta's teeth. You wish to kill the lawkeepers. The angels are not merely biology, Saiyan. They are the immune system of reality. They do not dodge your blows because they are fast. They dodge because the universe rearranges itself to accommodate their safety. You cannot punch a shadow. You cannot blast a whisper. Vegeta clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. The purple aura of Ultra Ego flickered and died, suffocated by the sheer atmospheric pressure of the entity. He felt small. It was a sensation he loathed, a bitter taste that reminded him of Frieza's boot on his neck, of Beerus' finger tapping the table. I do not care what they are. Vegeta spat, the words tearing from his throat. I have surpassed limits my entire life. I have turned gods into stepping stones. If they are the law, then I will become the crime. Tell me what I must trade. My life? My body? Take it. The entity leaned closer. The darkness around Vegeta thickened, smelling of ozone and ancient dust. Your life is a trivial currency. It burns out in a blink. I have no use for your mortality. The banished father raised a finger, pointing directly at Vegeta's chest, at the heart that beat with the pride of a fallen lineage. To wield the power of the void, you must empty the vessel. You cling to your rage, your rivalry, your love for the woman of blue hair, the boy of the sword. These are tethers. They bind you to the realm of Zeno. They make you heavy. Vegeta stiffened. The image of Bulma flashed in his mind, her smile, her shouting, the way she held Bulla, the face of Trunks, the infuriating grin of Kakarot. They were the fuel that had driven him for decades. You cannot hold the void if your hands are full of earthly things, the entity whispered. To kill the angels, you must become like me, a variable that equals 0. You must trade your soul not to hell, but to silence. You will remember them, but you will not feel them. You will look at your rival and see only meat. You will look at your wife and see only chemistry. That is the price of the power that kills God. Silence stretched between them, heavier than any gravity chamber. Vegeta looked down at his trembling hands. Was it worth it? To lose the fire that made him a Saiyan? To become a cold husk just to prove a point? He thought of the smile on Whis' face, that polite, condescending detachment. He thought of Goku, always one step ahead, always the golden child of the multiverse, protected by plot and prophecy. Vegeta closed his eyes. When he opened them, the pupils were already fading, the light dimming. I have been a prince, Vegeta said, his voice hollow, devoid of its usual growl. I have been a villain. I have been a hero. I have been a father. He looked up at the colossal shadow, his face twisting into a grimace of terrible resolve. I am done being anything that has a definition. If I must lose myself to find the strength to surpass them, then take it. He dropped to one knee. It was the first time Vegeta had knelt since the days of Frieza, but this was not submission. It was a transaction. Make me the void, Vegeta whispered. The banished father smiled, a tearing of the dark that revealed rows of non-light. Then let the subtraction begin. Time in the void realm does not pass. It accumulates. It piles up like drifts of black snow, burying the mind in isolation. For what might have been a minute or a millennium, Vegeta screamed. He hung suspended in the center of a black vortex, his body racked by a pain that transcended the physical. This was not the tearing of muscle or the breaking of bone. It was the scouring of his essence. The banished father did not train him with spars or weights. The entity trained him by removing things. Pain is a signal, the father's voice echoed from everywhere at once. It tells you that you exist. Ignore it. Erase the signal. Vegeta's armor had long since disintegrated, eaten by the friction of the anti-ki that now swirled around him. His skin was pale, leaching color as his body adapted to the absence of light. He tried to summon his rage, the familiar heat that had always saved him. He thought of Frieza destroying planet Vegeta. Nothing. The memory was there, like a dry photograph, but the heat was gone. He thought of Bulma slapping Beerus. Nothing. No fear. No protective instinct. Just an image of biological interaction. What are you doing to me? Vegeta roared, but the roar lacked its usual fire. It sounded metallic, distorted. I am cleaning the weapon, the father replied. Beerus taught you destruction, Hakai. That is the energy of entropy. It turns matter into sand. But sand is still something. I am teaching you negation, the power to turn 1 into 0. The vortex spun faster. Vegeta felt a coldness pierce his chest, settling into the core where his ki usually burned. It was an invasive, freezing sensation, like swallowing liquid nitrogen. It began to eat his golden ki, devouring the Super Saiyan cells, cannibalizing the God ki. He gasped, arching his back as his very biology was rewritten. The Saiyan potential, the Zenkai boost, the emotional triggers was being cauterized. The angels use Ultra Instinct, the lecture continued, boring into his mind. They exist in a state of flow, reacting before thought. To defeat them, you cannot react. You must dictate. You must become the inevitable. The void does not fight the light, Saiyan. The void simply is. And where the void is, the light cannot be. Slowly, the screaming stopped. Vegeta floated in the silence. The pain was gone. The rage was gone. The exhaustion was gone. In their place was a clarity so sharp it felt like a blade pressed against his optic nerve. He looked at his hand. The skin was alabaster white. His fingernails were black. A dark, jagged sigil, the mark of the Banished One, began to etch itself onto his left pectoral, burning with a cold, violet-black smoke. He clenched his fist. There was no explosive aura. No shaking of the ground. Just a sudden, terrifying absence of reality around his hand. The space distorted, looking like a glitch in a video file. The Banished Father lowered his face, the massive eyes inspecting his creation. "How do you feel, Prince?" Vegeta lifted his head. His eyes opened. The pupils were gone. The irises were gone. There was only pure, blinding white. "I don't feel," Vegeta said. The voice was his, yet it wasn't. It had lost the jagged edge of his ego. It was smooth, final, and terrifyingly calm. "I simply understand." "Good," the entity rumbled. The Grand Priest believes his children are untouchable because they are woven into the fabric of the cosmos. He believes they are the ink on the page. The father pointed a massive finger toward a tear in the darkness, a portal leading back to the vibrant, noisy, colorful universe Vegeta had left behind. "Go, my Hollow Prince. Show them that even ink can be erased." Vegeta stood on the nothingness. He did not power up. He did not shout. He simply took a step, and the null realm shivered. He looked at the portal. Through it, he could sense the distant, pulsing lights of the gods. They felt loud. They felt messy. They felt like errors that needed correcting. "The debt is paid," Vegeta said to the shadow. "I will leave nothing but silence. The universe screams when a god of destruction dies. It is a violent, tearing sound, a sudden vacuum in the cosmic balance that sends ripples through every star in the galaxy. But when an angel dies, there is no scream. There is only a sudden, terrifying correction." On the sacred world of the Kai in Universe 6, the afternoon was bathed in an eternal, golden twilight. Fua, the Supreme Kai, sat nervously sipping tea, his rotund form trembling slightly as Champa, the Destroyer, berated him for the lack of savory snacks. Beside them, Vados stood tall and serene, her staff tapping rhythmically against the grass, her eyes closed in a mask of polite endurance. "This is insultingly bland," Champa roared, spitting out a rice cracker. "We travel across the neutral zone for a meeting, and you serve me cardboard? Vados, destroy this table. Lord Champa, perhaps we should focus on the—" Vados stopped. Her staff ceased its tapping. Her eyes opened, revealing the calm, violet depths of the void within them. But for the first time in millennia, the calm was fractured. The wind had stopped. Not just the breeze on the hill, but the movement of air molecules themselves. The birds in the alien trees froze mid-song, not out of fear, but because the sound waves carrying their melodies had simply ceased to exist. The golden twilight of the Kai world began to drain away, replaced by a desaturated grayscale, as if the color was being siphoned out of reality. "Vados," Champa grunted, sensing the sudden drop in pressure. "What did you do? Why is it so quiet?" "It is not quiet, my lord," Vados whispered, her grip tightening on her staff. "It is empty." She turned, her gaze locking onto the horizon. There was no explosion, no gathering of ki, no thunderous approach. There was simply a distortion, a smudge in the air, like a fingerprint on a camera lens. From that smudge, a figure stepped forward. Vegeta did not walk on the grass. The grass withered into white ash before his boots could touch it. He wore the silence like a cloak. His chest was bare, the blackened sigil of the Void Father pulsing with a necrotic rhythm. His hair, void black and flat, absorbed the remaining light of the world. "You," Champa squinted, walking forward with a sneer. "You're the Saiyan, the loud one. Vegeta." "What is this? Did Beerus send you to deliver an apology gift? You look like you've been sleeping in a chimney." Vegeta did not look at Champa. His white, pupilless eyes were fixed solely on Vados. He walked past the Destroyer as if Champa were merely a piece of furniture. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" Champa's ego flared, purple Hakai energy igniting around his hand. "Don't ignore Destroyer. Champa lunged, thrusting his palm forward. A sphere of destruction aimed directly at Vegeta's spine. It was a killing blow, fueled by the insecurity of a god who felt ignored. The energy sphere struck Vegeta's back. It did not detonate, it did not bounce off. It vanished. There was no sound of impact. The Hakai energy simply touched Vegeta's skin and dissolved into mathematical zero. Champa stumbled forward, his momentum unchecked, nearly crashing into the Saiyan. He stared at his own hand in horror, then at Vegeta's unblemished skin. What? Champa breathed. Vegeta stopped. He turned his head slightly, looking at Champa over his shoulder with the indifference of a mountain regarding an ant. You deal in subtraction, cat, Vegeta said, his voice overlapping with the distorting echo of the void. But you cannot subtract from zero. He flicked his wrist. He did not touch Champa. He simply swiped his hand through the air in the destroyer's direction. A wave of absence washed over Champa. The god of destruction's eyes rolled back. His aura was stripped from his body instantly. He collapsed face first into the ash, unconscious, his divine connection severed not by force, but by the sudden realization that he was obsolete. Fuwa screamed, scrambling backward over his tea set. Vados did not scream. She stepped forward, interposing herself between the fallen destroyer and the hollow prince. Her halo glowed with an intense, blinding brightness, the full power of an angel responding to an existential threat. You have altered your fundamental nature, Vados said, her voice cool, though a bead of silver sweat traced a line down her cheek. You have traded your soul for a power that violates the treaty of existence. The Grand Priest will not overlook this. The priest is blind, Vegeta replied, turning fully to face her. He looks for Ki. He looks for life. I am neither. I cannot allow you to proceed. Vados spun her staff, the gem glowing green. Ultra Instinct allows me to exist in the moment of action. Before you decide to strike, I have already moved. You cannot hit what is already gone. Is that so? Vegeta took a step. Vados moved. She was a blur of silver light, faster than time, dancing around him in a complex pattern of evasion and counterstrikes. She tapped his neck, his knee, his temple pressure points designed to incapacitate instantly. But every time her staff connected, she felt nothing. No resistance, no flesh. It was like striking deep water. The impact force of her blows didn't transfer. It dissipated. Vegeta stood still, letting her strike him. He didn't dodge. He didn't block. He watched her with those dead white eyes. You are reacting to intent, Vegeta whispered. Vados spun behind him, aiming a chop at his carotid artery. But I have no intent, he finished. Vegeta raised his hand. He didn't aim at Vados. He aimed at the space around her. He clenched his fist. Stagnation. The space Vados occupied turned gray. The time skip, the automatic dodge, the divine reflex had all halted. The flow of Ultra Instinct required a river to swim in. Vegeta had just dried up the river. Vados froze mid-strike, her body locking up as the physics supporting her movement collapsed. She gasped, her eyes widening in genuine terror. She was trapped in a pocket of dead reality. Vegeta turned slowly. He reached out and wrapped his hand around her throat. Your instinct relies on the rules of the game, Vegeta said softly, lifting the angel into the air. The halo behind her head flickered, cracking like brittle glass. I flipped the board. Whis dropped his staff. The clatter echoed loudly in the silence of Beerus' temple. The oracle fish stopped swimming. Beerus, who had been napping on a hammock, snapped his eyes open, sensing the sudden, violent spike of anxiety from his attendant. He had never seen Whis drop his staff. Never. Whis. Beerus sat up, his ears flattening. What is it? Did the Omni King call? Whis stared at the orb of his staff, which was currently swirling with static, a gray noise that refused to show an image. His hands, usually so steady, were trembling. My sister, Whis whispered, his voice uncharacteristically small. Her signal. It didn't just fade, my lord. Beerus hopped down, walking over to him. What do you mean? Is she hurt? Whis looked up at Beerus, and the destroyer saw a look of profound horror in the angel's eyes. She has been unwritten! The news did not travel. It infected. It began as a tremor in the fabric of the neutral zones, a shudder that every Kaioshin across the 12 universes felt in the marrow of their bones. The link to Universe 6 had not been severed. It had been erased. The stars of that universe still burned, the planets still spun, But the divine layer, the intricate web of supervision maintained by Fuwa, Champa, and Vados, was simply gone. In the great palace of the Omni King, a space of infinite whiteness and floating pillars, the silence was absolute. The Grand Priest stood with his back to the throne, his hands clasped behind him. He was a being of perfect equilibrium, a creature who existed to facilitate the whims of Zeno. He did not feel fear. He did not feel anger. But as he stared into the viewing orb that floated before him, showing the gray static where his daughter's signature used to be, he felt a sensation he had not experienced since the era before time. He felt an error. "Father." The voice was small, innocent, and terrifying. Zeno floated down from his throne, tilting his oval head. "Why is the board messy? One of the pieces is missing." The Grand Priest turned. His expression was serene, but his eyes, usually a soft, welcoming lavender, had hardened into violet diamonds. "It appears, sire, that we have a defect in the system. A variable that has learned to subtract." "Subtract?" Zeno clapped his hands, delighted. "Is it a game?" "No, sire," the Grand Priest said, and for the first time, his halo flared, a ring of blinding white fire expanding behind him. "It is a rebellion." Goku stood on the edge of a jagged cliff in the other world. King Kai cowered behind his car, clutching his antennae, vibrating with panic. "Goku, you don't understand," King Kai shrieked. "This isn't like Frieza! This isn't like Jiren!" "The pressure coming from the void. It's eating the afterlife." "The souls in line for check-in are dissolving." Goku didn't answer. He was in his base form, but his body was tense, vibrating with a frequency that matched the mastered Ultra Instinct state. He wasn't transformed, but he was ready. He looked up at the sky, which was turning a sickly, bruised purple. "I know, King Kai," Goku said softly. His usual goofiness was gone, replaced by the grim seriousness of a warrior who recognizes the scent of an old friend and the scent of a new monster. "It's Vegeta." "Vegeta?" King Kai sputtered. He went to train. He was supposed to learn Hakai. What did he do?" "He didn't learn Hakai," Goku said, clenching his fists. "He learned something else. I can't feel his ki. I can only feel the hole where he should be." Suddenly, the sky tore open. It wasn't a portal. It was a wound. A vertical slit of darkness appeared in the golden clouds of the other world, and from it, a figure descended. Vegeta landed on the cliff edge, opposite Goku. He looked different. His skin was pale as bone, his hair a flat, light-absorbing black. The sigil on his chest seemed to be breathing smoke. But the most terrifying thing was his face. It was completely blank. The sneer was gone. The scowl was gone. "Vegeta," Goku said, stepping forward. "Vados. We said you hurt Vados. Is that true?" Vegeta looked at Goku. The white eyes did not blink. "I removed an obstacle," Vegeta replied. His voice was calm, echoing with that terrible dual tone of the void. "The angels enforce a peace that keeps us as pets, Kakarot. I have broken the leash by killing her." Goku's voice rose, his aura flaring silver. "That's not breaking a leash, Vegeta. That's murder. We fight to protect, not to erase. You fight to maintain the status quo," Vegeta said, walking forward. The ground turned to gray dust beneath his boots. "You polish your instinct to serve them." "I have seen the truth of the hierarchy. It is a pyramid of corpses, Kakarot, and I am here to topple it." "I won't let you," Goku said. Silver light exploded. Goku triggered Mastered Ultra Instinct instantly, the giant silver avatar forming around him, a titan of pure reflexive defense. He launched a punch that could shatter a galaxy. Vegeta didn't move. He didn't block. The massive fist of the Ultra Instinct avatar slammed into Vegeta. Or it should have. Instead, the avatar's arm simply disintegrated upon contact with Vegeta's aura. The energy unraveled, turning from silver light into harmless sparks. Goku's eyes widened. He fell back, his form flickering. "Your instinct dodges danger," Vegeta said, raising a hand. "But I am not danger. I am the end." Before Vegeta could strike, a pillar of light descended from the heavens. It was not the warm light of a transport cube. It was the blinding, searing light of absolute authority. The Grand Priest had arrived. He floated down, his small stature betraying the incomprehensible density of his power. He did not look at Goku. He looked only at Vegeta. Vegeta of the Saiyans, the Grand Priest said. His voice was not loud, but it silenced the wind, the thunder, and the beating of Goku's heart. You bear the mark of the Banished One. You have murdered a child of the Omni King's court. There is no trial for this. There is only correction. Vegeta looked up at the Grand Priest. For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed his face. Not fear, hunger. Finally, Vegeta whispered. The architect. The Grand Priest raised one finger. Disappear. A beam of erasure, pure and white, shot toward Vegeta. This was the technique that could wipe out a timeline. It hit Vegeta square in the chest. Goku screamed. Vegeta! The light engulfed the Saiyan. The world turned white. But as the glare faded, a sound emerged. A low, grinding hum. Vegeta was still standing. He held the erasure beam in his hands. The skin on his palms was smoking, cracking, revealing purple light beneath, but he was holding it. He was negating the erasure. You think... Vegeta gritted his teeth, the strain causing the void sigil to bleed black ichor. You think you can delete nothing? With a roar that shattered the dimension of the other world, Vegeta crushed the beam. The energy imploded. He lunged at the Grand Priest. For the first time in the history of the Dragon Ball cosmos, the Grand Priest was forced to raise both hands in defense. The impact of Vegeta's fist against the priest's barrier cracked the sky of the universe from end to end. The clash between Vegeta and the Grand Priest was not a battle of martial arts. It was a collision of fundamental truths. The Grand Priest represented order, the rigid, mathematical structure that held the multiverse together. Every movement he made was perfect, every counter-strike calculated to the infinite decimal. He was the equation that always balanced. Vegeta was the error. He was the anomaly that refused to be solved. They fought in the ruins of the other world, but the shockwaves were tearing apart the fabric of the mortal realm. On Earth, the sky turned a bruised violet. In the Kaioshin realm, the sacred sword crumbled to dust. The universe was groaning under the weight of two absolutes warring for dominance. You are a glitch, the Grand Priest said, his voice remaining terrifyingly calm even as he blocked a flurry of blows that would have vaporized a galaxy. He parried Vegeta's strike with a wrist flick, sending a wave of repelling force that smashed the Saiyan through a floating island. A temporary stain. You believe this power makes you free? It makes you a slave to non-existence. Vegeta exploded from the rubble, his body now wreathed in a cloak of black, smoking energy, the full manifestation of the omni-negation. Freedom is the ability to say no, Vegeta roared. And I am saying no to your laws! No to your games! No to your puppet king! He gathered the void energy into his palms. It wasn't a sphere. It was a tearing of space, a jagged, collapsing black hole in the shape of a lance. Gamma burst flash? Null. He thrust the lance forward. The Grand Priest narrowed his eyes. For the first time, the angel felt the cold whisper of genuine threat. He abandoned his defensive stance and summoned his halo, a massive, spinning ring of divine light. He fired a counterblast of pure creation energy, a beam meant to rewrite reality into something harmless. The two beams met. There was no explosion. There was simply silence. The meeting point of the energies created a gray sphere that expanded rapidly, eating everything it touched. Sound, light, gravity, all were devoured. Goku, watching from the shattered remnants of Snake Way, shielded his eyes. Vegeta, stop! If you win, there will be nothing left to rule. Vegeta didn't hear him. The whisper of the banished father was loud in his mind now, a drumbeat of triumph. Push, erase, finish it. Vegeta poured everything into the blast. He burned his memories. He burned his pride as a prince. He burned the image of Trunks holding his sword. He burned the image of Bulla's first step. He fed it all to the void. Disappear. Vegeta screamed. The black lance pierced the white beam. It cracked the Grand Priest's halo. The Grand Priest's eyes widened in genuine shock. Impossible. The lance struck him. The Grand Priest did not scream. He simply looked at Vegeta with an expression of profound sadness. His form began to unravel, turning into ribbons of white light that were sucked into the void of Vegeta's attack. The pillar of the cosmos, the father of all angels, was unwritten. With the Grand Priest gone, the correction ceased. The gray sphere collapsed. Silence fell. Vegeta floated in the air, his chest heaving. The black smoke of his aura slowly receded, soaking back into his skin. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. He had done it. He had killed the apex. He had shattered the ceiling. Vegeta. He turned. Goku was floating nearby, looking at him not with anger, but with pity. You won, Goku said softly. But look around you. Vegeta looked. The other world was gone. The check-in station, the clouds, the ogres erased. Below them, the universe was dim. The stars were flickering out, one by one. Without the Grand Priest to maintain the divine layer, the intricate synchronization of the cosmos was failing. The angels in the other universes would go dormant. The destroyers would lose their link. Entropy would accelerate. Vegeta had not just killed a god, he had killed the engine of the multiverse. He landed on a drifting chunk of rock, the only solid ground left in the vicinity. He sat down. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by a cold, hollow ache in his chest. He reached for the connection to his family, the mental tether he always had to Trunks and Bulma. He couldn't find it. He remembered them. He knew their names, he knew their faces, but he couldn't feel them. The love, the protectiveness, the warmth, it had all been traded. He had burned it to fuel the final blast. The banished father's laughter echoed in his mind, faint now, satisfied. The house is burned, Prince. Now you can see the sky. Vegeta looked up. The sky was black. Endless, starless, black. Goku landed beside him. He didn't power up. He just sat down, keeping a distance. We can fix this, Goku said, though he sounded unsure. Maybe the Super Dragon Balls. They are stone, Vegeta said, his voice flat. I killed their creator's creator. The magic is dead, Kakarot. Then what do we do? Vegeta rested his chin on his fist. He looked like a king on a throne of ash, the strongest being in existence, the man who surpassed the angels. I don't know, Vegeta whispered. He closed his eyes. In the silence of the dying universe, the only sound was the beating of his own heart, a rhythmic, lonely drum in the dark. He had finally reached the top of the mountain, only to find that there was no air to breathe.